This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to this week's episode of Doc and Jock, episode 473. Genuinely excited to record with Adam, the Jock Strozinski. We're going to break it all down. Detroit Lions training camp as it progresses. A victory, finally! I was genuinely shocked because I know many of you don't really care about wins and losses in the preseason, but the Lions had not recorded a preseason win since 2018, and that's a long time. So when it happens, we'll talk all about it in regards to what we saw with the backups, with the performance that you saw from the defensive line stopping the run, the emergence of maybe a fifth or sixth wide receiver that can be counted on. We're going to look at all of that, and we'll preview what's going to happen this Sunday afternoon. After our fantasy draft, the Lions will take on the Pittsburgh Steelers in the finale, and doing it with me, as always, my guy Adam. What's going on, man? Obviously enjoying Hard Knocks and kicking things off today talking Lions. What's happening, brother?
Yeah, it was really good. Another really good episode of Hard Knocks. I think as this process has continued to unfold, you're really seeing the character and you're really seeing the charisma of this coaching staff. And it makes a ton of sense why these players want to play for this coaching staff. I think it was TJ Hawkinson was on Bustin' with the Boys and basically talked about the difference between Dan Campbell and Matt Patricia and how they're both hard-edged guys, right? They're both guys who demand a lot from you. But there's a different way that Dan Campbell goes about it compared to Matt Patricia. And everybody on this team seems to have embraced that. And you're seeing it. It's coming through on these episodes of Hard Knocks. And I think you're seeing it on the field, too. I think this is going to translate. What you're getting from this coaching staff, I think will translate onto the field. Now, whether that translates into playoff wins, I don't know. But I do think it's going to result in more wins this season than it did last season. And I think what you're getting from this coaching staff, this authentic coaching staff, these guys who really enjoy the game, who enjoy being there, enjoy pushing and building these guys and bringing them up, I think you're going to end up getting a team that is really, really tight. And I think that's going to show on the field. I thought another really good episode of Hard Knocks, like I said. And it's going to be interesting because we're basically into that final window where the final roster is going to come out. There's a bunch of key position battles. And look, I think if you went back last week and you watched that game against Atlanta and you watched Blau basically botch that entire game, you would have said he's being cut. There's no way he's making this team. Fast forward a week, he looked unstoppable against Indianapolis. He looked great against Indianapolis. He looked really, really good. There were a couple passes that were dropped, but otherwise, I thought he looked really, really good. He looked really efficient. So, there's a ton of things that have kind of happened from this week compared to last week. Hard Knocks picked it all up. We got to witness it all with that, as well as some of the live in viewing of that practice with the Colts. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see how this final week of training camp plays out.
It was funny because you remember last week, if you guys can go listen to it, episode 472, we watched basically the Wednesday practice from the studio, which was funny because you and I kind of maybe had a wink-wink vibe, like maybe they're not supposed to be showing it like this. Well, Pat McAfee came out and said, well, basically they hired an external camera company. They weren't supposed to be showing it like that. And you can tell that it was slanted heavily on Wednesday for the Colts offense. But those drills, you got to remember how these drills are set up. 7-on-7 drills, the defensive backs have no chance. Basically, the receivers have all day to get open and get in to do their thing. Where you really learn is in competitive drills and in situations 2-minute, 4-minute, where things are shaken out. And despite whoever may say I went there or not, the defense struggled. There's no secrets in the NFL. I mean, it's kind of funny when you recognize that there's like 25 entities that cover the NFL, and every single practice is talked about. So you really, in essence, don't have to be there to make formulative statements. You can draw conclusions based on what you see. Wednesday was not good for the Lions. And then Thursday, you would expect that there would be some comeback, and there was some competitive get-upness to the Lions. But listen,
I think there's a lot you can read into that.
Yeah,
and because not last year, but the last coaching regime, I don't think this team would have got up for day 2.
Right.
I think with this team gets up for this coaching staff.
They
I
respond,
think what you've seen with Hard Knocks was the running backs looked awful, right? They looked absolutely awful. Jamal Williams had, I don't remember the guy's name, number 44 from Indianapolis, all upside his head, just in his head. The next day they come out, and that team is completely different, firing on all cylinders. They had a really good day at practice, whereas the day before was absolutely abysmal. So I think what you have here is you've got a team that does get up and will get up for this coaching staff, and I think that goes a long way. I think it means a lot for these players that these coaches have their back, because I think the guys who were here before, guys like Tracy Walker, guys like TJ Hawkinson, guys who were here before, they understand what that means. There's a bit of a difference. There is a bit of a culture shift going on with this team, and I think it's good. I think it's really, really good.
It is. And, really, in the end, it's just really tough for defensive backs to make plays. Everyone was said, how on earth are you going to say and formulate, well, yeah, the cornerbacks did well, when everybody's going, wow, look how big and massive this Indianapolis Colts first-team offense is. Offensive line, wide receivers, Michael Pittman, the tight end. It's just damn near impossible. So, of course, they were going to struggle. But then day 2 comes along, and you make strides, and you have an opportunity to compete and do some things and learn. And that's the whole purpose. And then Hard Knocks showed, too, the respect that Dan Campbell has for Frank Reich. And maybe in 2023, the Colts will visit the Lions, and it'll make for a fun atmosphere, because when another team comes, it makes for a festive atmosphere. So based on what you saw on Hard Knocks and the game and the 2 halves combined, who do you think is in the lead? I had an opportunity. I asked Dan Campbell. I said, hey, who's in the lead? Straight up, right, direct to him. And he said it's neck and neck. So there's still competition between Boyle and Blau. Now, they provide, those 2 guys provide 2 different skill sets. Blau can extend a play a little bit more, but will be more likely prone to maybe make an epic mistake, whereas Tim Boyle has got the rocket arm, but he's just all out of rhythm with the receivers. I mean, it was good on Tuesday evening. He was connecting more with the reserves, but you don't get enough reps. The first team, you guys got to also understand, the second and third team offenses don't get a whole heck of a lot of opportunity in practice to develop this rapport. It's a lot of work with the first team, and a lot of work where you would not expect that you're going to just significantly get better. The offense is out of sorts when Blau runs it, but he had an opportunity when Blau runs it in practice, but he had an opportunity to make some throws, and it appeared at least that against the Colts, he had a little bit more zip and a little bit more of what you would be looking for in a backup. But, in my mind, I would not be all that concerned if they went in a totally different direction, but they're not. So I think in the end, it's going to be either they keep Boyle as the backup or they keep both Boyle and Blau.
Yeah, look, I can see them keeping 2. I think we'll learn a lot more after Game 3 is done and over with. I think really if one or the other outshines the other person, I think that's going to be your backup quarterback. If I had to put money on it right now, I would probably go with Blau over Boyle. Lord. And it's just because I think Blau, like you said, can extend plays with his legs a little bit. I thought his showing in Game 2, I think that's going to go a long way. I think he made a lot of good plays. I think he protected the ball. I think showing the ability to basically rebound after a catastrophic botch that cost this team a game, I think it goes a long way. Also, I think there is something to be said about kind of your presence in the locker room. This is something that I've gathered from watching Hard Knocks. That man doesn't swear. He seems like he is the ultimate Boy Scout. He ends up making a play and he's like, by golly, gosh darn it. Like what? His head coach is over there effing up one way and effing down the other, and this guy's over here sounding like my grandpa. It's crazy. But I think he carries himself in such a way that it's kind of calm, it's cool. Even when he had that big mistake, he was down on himself, but it wasn't one of those things where he was so pissed off he's throwing a tantrum on the sideline. He's just kind of even keeled, and I think that'll go a long way. I think if I had to put money on it right now, I would go Blau over Boyle, but I could see them keeping both these guys. I could really see going into the season again with 3 quarterbacks. It's just really this game 3 is going to be so interesting for who's going to make this roster, because I think there are some really tight battles like this one.
And what is fascinating with the backups is the fact that everyone kind of presumes that maybe the organization is not going to care a whole heck of a lot in regards to Mason Rudolph. I don't think that rumor really held legs. I don't think it's going to, unless Rudolph comes in and torches Aaron Glenn's defense, then maybe Glenn will make a comment like, well, might as well go get him. But bottom line, you could upgrade. They won't. I think they like the room. They like the chemistry. They want to keep Goff nice and cozy, and there's not really a big commitment at all to the backups. Less than $3 million combined for the 2 backups. So I think that's why we are having this discussion, and that's just the way it is. No matter how many podcasts, no matter how many people rant and rave about upgrading the backups, they're not doing it. It's one of those 2 guys, and let's see this Sunday who steps up and makes the plays. Now, a player that has consistently stepped up and been reliable, but unfortunately there's the caveat, he's always doing it against reserves, is Tom Kennedy. And this is really interesting in that, for the baseball lovers, he is the classic 4A kind of player in that he's tailor-made to shine against reserves. But when you put him up against the likes of talented, speedy defensive backs, he might kind of slip back into the shadows. But there is something to be said about a glue guy, a guy that works hard, a player that is willing to go out there and, when he's given the opportunity, make plays. It's not his fault that his number gets called in games 2 and 3 of the preseason and he makes plays. You know, Khalil Pimpleton had a beautiful ball thrown to him, and unfortunately it's featured on Hard Knocks where it bounces off his chest, and you're like, but, you know, it's tough because in preseason and in training camp, Tom Kennedy has made those plays, and when the lights were the brightest, he had 2 touchdowns. So he's a player that's likable, but I think he's really one of those real fringe players that I hope maybe gets featured in Hard Knocks to kind of show us what that conversation is like with him if he does get cut. But man, Tom Kennedy, what's been your reaction to what this productive player has done, at least in the preseason? The preseason Hall of Famer.
So I think with Tom Kennedy, he's going to be one of those guys who will probably find his way on the outside looking in, and it's just because he's he shows up when you need him to show up. The problem is he's just a wide receiver. If you're going to keep a guy who's going to be your 5th or 6th wide receiver, they have to be able to do other things. You know, like Khalif Raymond, right? Khalif Raymond's not just a wide receiver. He's not just a gadget that you can plug into a game. The guy's also a return specialist. You had in game 2, you had Maurice Alexander. There's another guy who's basically trying for a roster spot. He could be possibly your 6th wide receiver, and he can return the football. Actually, he looked really good returning the football in game 2. So just being a wide receiver and being that low on the depth chart, you've got to come to the table with something else. And I think because he doesn't have anything else that he does exceptionally well. He's not a return guy. He's not a kickoff returner or a punt returner. He's not necessarily a gunner. They did give him some reps as a gunner on special teams, but it's not like he's multifaceted where you can plug him into different spots on this team. And I think that's why he finds his way looking out. The problem is he's so damn productive when he's given a chance and when he's given an opportunity. The guy takes advantage of it. So I don't know how you cut him. It's just he doesn't have anything else that he can do or that he brings to the table. And I think you would agree that if you're going to be a 5th or a 6th wide receiver on this team, you've got to be able to do other things. You can't just go out there and try to catch footballs.
Got it. I can see it either way, really. Obviously, he played a handful of games last year, up and down on the practice squad. Maybe a trade chip, maybe an opportunity to get him some run for another team, because I would find it very difficult for him to potentially earn significant playing time and reps in this offense with Amon-Ra St. Brown, Josh Reynolds, Jamison Williams is going to come back, DJ Chark. That would be a tall ask for him to potentially carve out a niche in this offense when there's so many offensive weapons. So obviously, the things to take away from the Colts game were very positive. I thought that the defensive line stopping the run was fantastic. The Lions rushing the football was positive. You could only perform against the players that are out there, and of course, you can't read too much into it, but it's at least nice to see that the Lions were able to effectively rush the football with Jamar Jefferson, Craig Reynolds, and reserves, and Justin Jackson, number 42. Pay attention to him. Sneaky good player, fast, reads well, has the ability to get outside, really making things difficult, I think, for Jamar Jefferson to make this team because he's the veteran, and Justin Jackson has experience in the league. And it lends to the question, do you think, has one of those players, maybe including Jackson, has he done enough to make it so that the Detroit Lions keep 4 running backs? That's really tough to do, especially when you got a lot of needs on defense. But, boy, I would be okay with 4 running backs that included DeAndre Swift, Jamal Williams, Craig Reynolds, and Justin Jackson. I think that's pretty solid, competitive at least, where if the top 2 guys aren't cutting it, you can get some run with Reynolds and Jackson.
See, I think Jamar Jefferson will probably be that 4th running back. And again, it goes back to having versatility with those skill position players. Jamar Jefferson's a guy who you can put on your special teams, and he can return a ball for you. Justin Jackson, I haven't seen enough of that. I think with Jamar Jefferson, also remember, Jamar Jefferson was drafted by this front office. So there might be a little bit there as well. This is the staff that scouted him. So I think we'll have to kind of wait and see there. But I could see them keeping 4. I just think the one guy that they do keep is Jamar Jefferson over Justin Jackson. I can see the argument going both ways, but I would lean more towards Jamar Jefferson just because he's a little bit more versatile. When you were setting this segment up, or this topic up, you brought up what the defensive line did. How surprised have you been by Austin Bryant's emergence? I guess is the word we could use here, because this is a guy who's been injured for most of his time here in Detroit, and now he's getting an opportunity, really kind of coming through. Had a couple of sacks, had a couple tackles for losses, had a really good week in practice leading up to that Colts game. What are your thoughts on this defensive line, and what are your thoughts on Austin Bryant?
Yeah, it's been cool because when we first got the opportunity at the podcast and with All Lions to get into the Lions locker room, obviously having Austin Bryant play with Clemson, he was one of the first people that I went to and struck up a conversation just talking about, I think the year after he came to the Lions, his rookie season, Clemson got back to a prominent spot in the playoff. And so I sat with him and he was welcoming and things like that. So you kind of see his evolution. And you sometimes forget that this is a player that was prominent on a prominent team in college football, and now he's in his 4th year. And I know we're not a patient society. We want immediate results. We want 12 sacks your rookie year. But it's been great to see. I knew he had talent, but also what I think is a blessing is when potentially sometimes someone else comes in, like an Aiden Hutchinson and a Charles Harris, and you continue to learn from the likes of Romeo and Julian Aquara, you also can learn a lot of things. And I think Aiden Hutchinson being there can definitely help the likes of an Austin Bryant in terms of learning, watching on film, learning what he's taking some things that Aiden does well and mixing it into your own game. And so Austin, and what was crazy was what caught. What made people kind of jump off his bandwagon was he was injured the first couple of years and that he was never there practicing regularly. This is one of the first years in last year where he's had a consistent stretch of not having to deal with the same injury, being out there in practice over and over and over again. So it was really cool to see. I'm not surprised. He was talented, and now it's great to see some production in regards to bull rushes, getting to the quarterback, disrupting a lot of the plays. So it's really cool and a nice individual. You know, there's certain players that when they walk off the practice field, they're looking straight ahead, not wanting to make eye contact. That dude is a stand-up guy. You nod, he nods. He handles his business, is willing to stand up, and he's not one of those guys that only talks to the media when the PR staff comes to him and says, hey, it's your day. Others have. I'm not going to name those names, but others on that defensive line, hey, I want to give you some run. Want to talk about what's going on? It's not my day in the media. Okay, pal. Keep it moving. I get it. I get all that, but you definitely get a vibe of those who are cool with the media and those that straight ahead like you're not there. And I'm short, so if you look straight ahead, you will actually literally a 6'2" guy walking straight ahead will never see me. It's that it's that interesting because I'm always looking and you can see who gives eye contact and who's smiling walking off the field. And there are dudes that just bookend to the locker room so fast that boom, you'll never get a chance to say hi. So I appreciate that learning now, getting back to talking to these players. But I'm not surprised at all. Austin Bryant, let's do this. I like it. You need that. You need some players to step it up. The defensive line, bro, if they can do some things, it is the key. The linebackers, the secondary safeties, defensive backs, everything's going to be predicated on disruptiveness from this defensive line. How this defense goes is going to start there. So I'm very happy. I think, too, because to share, Aiden Hutchinson, man, freakishly athletic. I've been impressed, at least against the Lions. The dude can move. The dude's fleet of foot, and he's learning. So I'm genuinely excited to see what this defense looks like against the Eagles because it's going to be a test. And you know it. You see it. If this defensive line struggles, the Lions are fucked.
Yeah, and look, and that's the thing. The defensive line has to be able to provide that pressure up front because the linebacking core is so suspect right now. I mean, you've got a rookie who is basically penciled in as your starter at linebacker. And after that, it's the guy who the comedian in Hard Knocks made fun of. It's Thor, Alex Anzalone. And you've seen what type of year he had last year. So unless he rebounds from the season he had last year, you can expect more of the same. And you pair that with a rookie who, look, I think what you got with Rodriguez is great. But he's a high motor guy. I don't think he's necessarily the most skilled guy. I think he's kind of a try-hard guy who has a high motor, so it means he's going to keep working. He's going to work hard. He's going to put himself in positions to make plays, and he's going to go out there and he's going to get the job done the majority of the time. The rest of these linebackers on this team, like, I don't know what you're getting with Derek Barnes. I don't know if Chris Board's going to make the team. You're bringing back Jarrett Davis, and you all remember how the first go-round with Jarrett Davis went, and I'm not even sure he makes this team. So you've got a ton of guys who are playing that linebacking position who honestly just aren't very good. They might be a rotational guy on somebody else's roster, but here these guys are being counted on to start. So it's all going to start up front with that defensive line, with those edge rushers getting to the quarterback, putting that pressure on, because that's going to help bail out those linebackers and it's going to help bail out the secondary. I'll be honest with you, I don't think the secondary has played well at all this preseason. It's been really disappointing. Thought you maybe had something with Oruwariye. I'm not really sure that you're penciling him in as your number one cornerback. You know, I think Tracy Walker has done a good enough job, but what does that really mean? You know, who's going to be that second cornerback? Has anybody really separated themselves? I don't think so. So it really does come down and hinge. This defense hinges on this defensive line and this defensive line bullying offensive linemen and getting to the quarterback for stops to happen and to turn the ball over. So hopefully Austin Bryant continues to do what he's doing and he can shed some light for maybe some of these guys who might be struggling. But I mean, look, we talked a little bit about the linebacking core. Does Jarrett Davis make this team, or does Chris Board make this team? Because when I look at the roster and I pare it down, these are two guys that I could see one staying, the other one going, or possibly both of them being on the chopping block.
Yeah, no, it's going to be based on what you see. I think it's Anzalone and Board or Anzalone and Rodriguez mixed, and then you have an opportunity to see Derek Barnes and you know, in the mix as well. So it's going to be interesting with that linebackers core to see. You know, I was surprised genuinely that one of the cuts was Sean Dion Hamilton. He was a player that Dan Campbell talked up, so he's now gone. So the top three linebackers are there. It's the fourth linebacker spot that you're curious about who's going to take that spot. So it's Anzalone. I see the four: Anzalone and Barnes. And then you have Malcolm Rodriguez and Chris Board. Those are the top four. You may have to compete with one other person to potentially get that fifth spot. But I think just based on the film, and it's a nice story, I think they brought him in as a reclamation project to see if there was something there. He doesn't fit. There's at times when there's play recognition that the skill set is just not fully developed. And so you have to take stock and credence to what Kelvin Shepard said, he's like, hey, this guy's making plays. He recognizes where he needs to go. He makes plays. And Jared Davis getting better week by week. I think that obviously he has a better mindset, but there's still holes in his game that makes it, for me, I think the battle is pretty simple. The Lions went out and recruited Chris Board to come in here. So it's Board, Anzalone, Derek Barnes is expected to take a step forward in year number 2, and Malcolm Rodriguez, who, in my mind, I think it's worth having a conversation now because Aaron Glenn said it now a couple times. I asked him on Tuesday, I said, hey, how's this guy reacting? Is he staying humble? And of course, the coaching staff does not want to create a rookie superstar sensation off of what we see in practice and off of Hard Knocks. So I love when Aaron Glenn and Dan Campbell bring up the comments that Bill Parcells made, because that's how I started watching football, was the Giants and the Niners in the late 80s. So when they hear the kind of a semblance of that, it's awesome. They're like, hey, don't put him in the Hall of Fame yet. I know you guys are going to ask about him, but he's got to do what he's got to do, and he's got to continue to develop. For me, I was trying to find a way to give you guys a little peek behind the curtain. I wanted to ask in a way that was going to get an answer, but I didn't know exactly how to ask it in regards to, and this was my thinking, and sometimes when you deliver it that way, it's going to come off as crass and pretty bad, but here was my thinking. As I was sitting there waiting to get my turn in to talk to Aaron Glenn, I was thinking, wait a minute, how fucked up is it that your linebacking core is being led by a rookie, a 6th-round rookie? Like, what the fuck? Like, if that's the case, that's good for Malcolm, but that's fucked up for your other unit there. Like, how do you guys perceive that? Like, wait a minute, are you happy and thrilled that, hey, this guy's taking the bull by the horns? Or does that make you then, for me, I would start looking at the other 4 and going, what the fuck, guys? Just like Calvin Shepard said, like, what the fuck? Well, if you guys are going to let this rookie sit here and win your job, like, what the fuck? Where's the competitive nature? Where's the, like, this dude should not, in any kind of circumstance, knowing what you guys know, Derek Barnes, Chris Board, Alex Anzalone, Jared Davis, how on earth is this dude coming in here with his Oklahoma State attitude and just kind of taking the country by storm? Come on. I don't like that. Me personally, not anything as a knock against Malcolm, but the competitiveness in me says, what the fuck? If your best linebacker is a 6th-round rookie, your unit stinks and is not good enough. That was what I was sitting there thinking. But it's nice to see someone step up. But dude's still undersized. Dude's still going to get mauled over by tight ends and going to get his head on a swivel by these huge running backs who might potentially say, okay, you want to line up? Let's go mano-a-mano, and let's see where the force lies. I'm curious to get your thoughts on the rise of Malcolm Rodriguez. Is it too much too soon, or are you kind of intrigued by this little ball of hate?
Look, I love him. I think he's great. I've loved him since day one when Hard Knocks introduced him to us. I thought he was absolutely fantastic. So I love a guy who wants to go hit people. I love a high motor guy, like a try-hard guy. That's what he is. I wish he had probably a little bit more talent. That doesn't mean that he can't grow into that, and it doesn't mean that he can't reach his full potential. But I think he's fantastic. I think this town, I think the city's going to absolutely embrace him. I think you should be more upset that the 6th-round rookie is arguably your best linebacker, because the rest of that room is that weak. The rest of that room isn't picking up their slack. The rest of that room's not doing their job. And I think if you're going to be upset at anybody, you should be upset at everybody else in that room but Malcolm Rodriguez. I think he's been absolutely fantastic. I find him to be so intriguing. There was a point in Hard Knocks, there was a point in the Colts game where Kelvin Shepard ends up telling him, he's like, you're done. And he just looked pissed. He looked upset, like, what? Like, put me back in the game, coach. Like, I need to get back out there. I love that. That's a guy who doesn't want to come off the field. That's a guy who wants to continue to play. You need guys like that on this team. I don't think we have enough guys like that on this team. I think he's absolutely fantastic. And I think he's going to be a huge fan favorite really, really quick. By like game 7, this dude's going to be a huge fan favorite. Maybe 7's too late. I don't know. A guy who is going to be all over the place all the time.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope that's the case. I hope with Malcolm Rodriguez that you start to see a player that can take the bull by the horns and keep getting better. It's a lot of love. It's a lot of attention. He is definitely a player with a big personality, so I'm definitely curious to see how it evolves. Definitely with this Lions preseason, I think there's been a lot of fanfare. I really love Dan Campbell's speech that he gave, shedding the stench of losing. There's a lot of metaphorical type stuff. Little gimmicky for me in that, I understand you want to be able to get the message across that we're doing the little things wrong, that we're not doing enough to get the victories. But I don't need to see him pulling out pants and having flour sprayed all over the place to tell me that we're not playing good enough. You got film. You know what I mean? You got your voice. You got the ability to say, hey, David Blau, you stunk it up. You don't play at all. Kind of some of the more traditional aspects. And so we'll leave the Lions discussion with this, because this is kind of what you're starting to see among the fan base when you look online and you kind of talk amongst your peers. Obviously, Dan Campbell is a great communicator. Obviously, he's somebody that when you talk to him, you want to continue to listen. Does he have enough X's and O's experience? Does he have enough gamesmanship to know, hey, when do I call the right timeout? When do I empower my defense? When do I power my offense? When do I make the right fourth down call? That's yet to be determined. We know, great, he's a great motivator. He's a great talker. People are not going to check out on him. That gets credit because Matt Patricia couldn't do that, and that sunk his regime instantly. So great. Dan Campbell gets that. It's kind of like you get an A+, but on something that's really only weighted 35% of what you need to be a good coach. So great. You get the 35% credit. You get an A on being a good communicator and being a coach that the players like. But bottom line, when David Blau when he needed to make the play, his butthole clenched and he fucked up. When Chase Lucas needed to make a play, his butthole clenched up and he didn't make the play. Same thing can be said with the defense. They needed to make a play late against the Colts. You could argue they fucked it up. When is the time? Like, do you give him a second year and say, okay, he's still learning on the job? I do believe he is good. Like, the man can talk football. Like, you obviously saw it intentionally when Dan Campbell's talking to Shane Zylstra about certain things and talking to Khalil Pimpleton about route running and staying on his feet and adjustments. The man knows football. Can you translate it from the practice field to the bright lights on Sunday? Because obviously we all like Dan Campbell's popularity. Nice man, really kind, straight shooter, tells you when he wants to tell you and directly will not tell you what he doesn't want to tell you. And that's all you can ask for from somebody is look me in the eye, tell me what you're going to say, and be who you are. So that's what you get. It's great. You can go up to him and have a conversation. You could even probably make fun of him that he bakes and that he's into, figuring out how to make tortillas and how to make cookies in his off time, and he's got a Yorkie. That's fine. But my grade goes to 65% on Sunday when you need Ben Johnson to call the right play and call a timeout and set up the right 4-minute drill. You know what you're doing to match up against the Eagles defense. You know what you're going to do in the red zone on first down with 40 seconds left, not calling a run play. Because, dude, they're doing that. They're running in the red zone. In practice, they're running. I want to see more of that. Obviously, we all love the social media aspect of the world these days, but you and I are getting older. We've moved a little bit past the gimmicks of putting ourselves on video to do wild things. I want to see Dan Campbell master game management and X's and O's this season. That would be more impactful for me than having his flour spray all over his speech.
It's funny because Alyssa and I had this same conversation as we were watching Hard Knocks last night or on Tuesday night. And she leans over and she's like, he's a great football coach. And I was like, you think? And she's like, yeah, I would play for him. And I'm like, he's a really good motivator and he does a really good job inspiring his team. Doesn't necessarily make him a great football coach. X's and O's are very important. And she's like, you don't think he's good at X's and O's? I was like, I think this season we're going to really find out what he is. I was like, I think he is a great mouthpiece. I think he talks the talk. It's now, can he walk the walk? Can he back up everything he's saying? And it goes to what you said. Can he utilize his timeouts right? Can he get the right offensive call in? If he's got to grab Ben Johnson, he's got to say, no pass here. We're running this. This is a running down. Just run this play. Can he override Ben Johnson and get that play in? If it comes down to a defensive stop, if he notices something, can he grab Aaron Glenn and say, no, we need to put this package in. This is what's going to happen. Get these guys out there so they can stop this. Does he have the ability? Look, he does a great job delegating, and he does a great job of motivating his assistant coaches. And his assistant coaches are absolutely fantastic at motivating their units. But all that being said, it still comes down to, can you execute? When he's given the chance, he has to prove that he can execute. I think towards the end of last season, I think he got much more comfortable in his role, and I think he executed at a much higher efficiency rate than he did earlier in the season. That being said, I need to not really see a dip from that week one. When they're playing the Eagles, I need to be able to see him making those calls, executing at that high level, and basically commanding his troops. So I think there's still a lot that's unknown about Dan Campbell as far as that head coach goes, because I do think he's a good motivator. I think he's a great mouthpiece. I think he's a guy who everybody who's listening to him would run through a brick wall that is melting with hot lava and come out the other end and be ready to do it all over again. But I don't know if he can call the right formation and get his guys in position to score touchdowns. And that's really what kind of makes a great head coach. Bill Parcells, Bill Belichick, neither one of those guys were necessarily great motivators, but they commanded the room. And those guys knew X's and O's, and that's why they have a ton of championships between them. Dan Campbell's got to still prove that. So I'm not sure if he's a great head coach yet. I'm not sure where he's at with his X's and O's, but I will tell you, he's a dude who gets me hyped up and gets me pumped. So I think the guys will be pumped up when they go into play. It's just whether or not they'll be pumped up and in the right position to make a play.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. You said it. I think you're thinking the same thing. Rah-rah's great, gets you clicks on social media, and you handle your business, but most importantly is what you do on Sunday, and we're going to see it. So we'll see how it progresses moving forward. All right, we got to switch gears. One last thing that came across the interwebs this week that was just crazy, and it stinks because nobody likes the situation in which you notice that another team can unlock a baseball player's potential in a matter of days, hours, whereas you're spending weeks and months trying to figure stuff out. So for those that don't know, we're talking about the Tigers. Don't turn off, because this is something that's very important, and it's going to hint at the next step of this club's evolution with whoever they pick at general manager. So I look at it and I say, when a report comes out and it says that Robbie Grossman, who gets traded for nothing, in essence, to the Braves, and you get, a prospect that's in A-ball to because of how bad Grossman performed this year after a solid 2021 season, you then go, okay, and I know he's only hitting like 230, but it raised his batting profile because he was getting timely hits. He was actually making contact and finding much better at-bats more consistently with the Braves. So they ask, and they say, what's going on? He's like, they found it within a couple of days, and they said, work on this, and it worked. Why can't that happen with the Tigers? It's a situation in which you leave your head scratching, and you're just like, wow, how bad is the Tigers? Because now it's a trend. Itzhak Paredes, power numbers. Itzhak Paredes didn't do much here, falls on the depth chart, and he goes and someone else is better than him. You realize that Robbie Grossman performing for the Atlanta Braves is truly devastating. And I give credit to A.J. Hinch for answering and owning up to it, but it was disappointing in that why couldn't the Tigers get that done? And hopefully when they look at organizationally what's going on with the hitters, they figure it out.
I think at this moment in time, it's a know-nothing story. When I first heard this and I first read this, I was like, it's a little bit early for the Tiger haters to have a victory lap. Like, I get what's going on with Itzhak Paredes. That makes sense. I think when you look at Robbie Grossman's situation, it's really, really soon. Like if he continues this tear and he continues to do this as the season continues, then yeah, I think there's definitely a major issue. But I think going into the trade deadline, we all realized that there was an issue with the hitting. We realized that there was an issue with the Tigers analytics. We realized that there was an issue with something with the coaching staff. We realized there was an issue with the front office. Like we realized all these things. So Robbie Grossman getting traded and having a really good first 10 days or so, I'm not reading too much into it. We'll see what happens as the season kind of carries on. You and I both know this. Baseball is the one sport where water always finds its level. So if Robbie Grossman is going to, this season, if Robbie Grossman is going to be a 275 hitter, by the end of the season, he's going to be much closer to 275 than he is 213. So we'll see where he kind of ends up as the season kind of continues along. I'm not willing to say there's a victory lap that needs to be had here for the people who are like, hey, you need to blow it all up. The Tigers coaching staff, the Tigers analytics staff is absolutely trash. I do think there is something amiss, and I do think you can say that there is something amiss with how the front office conducted itself, with how A.J. Hinch this season was almost unwilling to make a change with the hitting coach and unwilling to make a move there. But at this moment in time, look, it's a small snapshot in time. I think we give it a little bit more time, kind of see what happens, and then you can have your victory lap if you want your victory lap. I think the Isaac Paredes trade, if you want to point to that and say, look, there's your red flag, there's the problem. Look, I'll agree with you because Isaac Paredes was a guy who came up here numerous times and didn't do anything. There was no performance. That's why when he was traded and everybody was ecstatic because you actually got a player who could hit 20, 30 home runs a season and would be able to provide you with a little bit of power. And he was a left-handed bat. And now he's got no Achilles tendons, and he's got vertigo, and he's got COVID, and he can't play. Well, Paredes is just hitting home runs down in Tampa. So I say let's pause on the victory lap for the Tiger haters saying that the analytics department is absolute shit.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate because it's a direct reflection that you're not that good. It's a direct indictment that you can spin it any way you want. We're doing everything right. We're doing this. We're organizational. It's like A.J. Hinch, we knew you're kind of full of shit. That's why Alavila's gone, and hopefully the next person, and give credit to A.J. Hinch in that he acknowledged, okay, yes, there is something to him going there, being part of a winner that also makes you relax a little bit more, that, hey, in the end, you're on a good team. That you don't have to put that much pressure on yourself to be a contributor. Whereas in Detroit, that pressure builds up. You know what I'm saying? And that Grossman's probably sitting there in the locker room like, man, if I don't get 2 hits today, we have less than no chance of winning. Nothing. If I don't do the thing, there's nothing going on. Whereas he can just go, be part of the team. He goes 2 for 4, 2 for 5. It's like, okay, it's not the best, but we can keep it moving and they want me. So it's a different vibe. And I get it. And sometimes it is in that realm of just changing teams was going to unlock it. That was the secret. Going from the Tigers to the Braves unlocked it, but in Detroit, it just has that feel of having egg on your face. And here in Detroit, we've had that nonstop where the permeating opinion would be, if Tim Boyle went back to the Packers, he probably would come and have a great preseason. If David Blau went to the Chargers, he probably would look a whole hell of a lot better as a person, as an individual, as a quarterback than he would here in Detroit. So it's just crazy to see. It was wild to see that. That was a tweet on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast. A matter of days. Days. Okay. Oh yeah. You just a hole in your swing. Do this. Do that. Boom, 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 and they start working on it. So it was really fascinating in regards to how quickly the tides can turn for these athletes, and it just you hope that the working relationship with A.J. Hinch and his prominence now in the organization can potentially get back next year. Because for me, it's taking a hit. These players have not maximized their value and maximized their potential this year, and there's a lot of reason for it. You can't blame it all on Alavila. You can blame a lot of it on him, but A.J. Hinch deserves some credit for this disastrous run that the Tigers have had. And it just sucks because of the fact that we've checked out now since late July. Great, Riley Green. That's good. Nice, young and up-and-coming player. But other than that, you got nothing else that is really marketable that you say, okay, I'm Cody Clemens, okay, kind of firing up a little bit that bat. That's good. Young players, all right, that's good. But the pitching staff has been a nice story. But overall, in terms of organizational depth and where this team is at, whew, it's a long climb, brother. We're talking about 2, 3, 4 more years when we even sniff relevancy. So we'll see. We'll see how this progresses with the Detroit Tigers. Man, good podcast, 45 minutes strong, talking about the Detroit Lions, Hard Knocks, their perception. I'm excited because this week is good. And then 2 weeks to kind of really hit home and explore what this team is about. There are going to be, from now until next Tuesday, 27 cuts. So make sure you stay tuned to Detroit Sports Podcast, all Lions as well, as we look at everything going on with the Lions, how that roster is going to shake out, how they address the cuts in the coming days. I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to see how it all shakes out. So it's that time. And we didn't even talk about it. This past Saturday was the last Saturday without college football. It's back, and we'll hit on some potential talks with the expansion of the Big Ten, what we're looking at for Michigan State, as Adam and I deep dive into what's going on with our programs. It's going to be a fun time talking football this fall, and there's a great place that you can check in every single week to look at all the happenings in Detroit sports. Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSJROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. Hit us up. Let us know. You like us. You don't like us. You like what we're talking about. You don't like what we're talking about. You like John. You like Adam. You hate John. You hate Adam. Whatever it may be, let us know. We're here to take it all in and enjoy our sports debate. Thanks, cuz. Episode 473 in the books, in the can. Podcasting time is now over. Let it rip. And a little teaser. This Sunday is the classic DocNJock Fantasy Football Family League that kicks off their draft. So there'll be some great stories as well coming out next week on the next edition of Doc and Jock.